Okay, all set.
All set. Okay, so with me today, of course, I have Tim German, who is taking the lead on a lot of these projects and just managing this overall program. He is part of the Department of Environment and Planning, and he is our planner. In addition, we will have James Blackwell, who is the director of the Office of Equal Employment Opportunity, to speak with you today. And of course, myself, Thomas Baines, Deputy Commissioner of Planning and Economic Development for Erie County with the Department of Environment and Planning. All right, so if we want to take a look at our agenda for today, next slide. So of course, we just did our welcome and introductions. We'll go through a brief background of this program. We'll talk about the allowable expenses, some of the procurement issues that we have and things that you should know, how payments will be awarded to you specifically. We'll talk about the equal employment opportunity and its implications, next steps, and then we'll have a question and answer period. Those of you who are on line and can see us, feel free to throw your questions in the chat box. We will get to them in the Q&A period. For folks who are maybe joining us on the phone, please wait till the question and answer period, and we'll be happy to unmute you, or you can place yourselves on unmute, and then we can get to your questions. All right, next slide. So before we get started, of course, this program started a couple years ago, and obviously this is round two. So we wanted to show you is a couple examples of the type of projects that have been completed in the past. So what you see before you here is the before picture of the Concordia Cemetery. And as you can see, I believe a vehicle ran into their wrought iron gate in the front, that wrought iron fence and gate in the front. It was pretty damaged. And so they were awarded a grant from us, roughly of about $38,000 to replace their roof and the fence that you see there. And the remainder was raised by the organization itself. So we were able to assist them with repairing those items. And then if we look at the next slide, it'll show you how it looks afterwards. So beautiful. We were able to help that organization out. But one thing to note, as this was a smaller project relative to the others, is that they did participate in raising some funds to help them get to the new roof and the replaced fence. So kudos to them for supporting the initiative by fundraising and increasing their funds to get more project done. Next project. So the next project you see here, can't see much, but this is the future site of the Hispanic Heritage Cultural Institute. What I wanted to show was a smaller project and a much larger project. So we here at DEP, we're really running the gamut of small projects to even larger ones. This one will be, when it's all said and done, a $30+ million project. This will be a 37,000 square foot building, and basically they will have a museum, a gallery, a cafe, gift shop, essentially an institute that will encompass all things that are relative to explaining and showing the Hispanic culture in Western New York. So if we look at the next slide, this is what they intend for it to be in the coming years. So sort of one small project and a large project, and we're doing everything in between. Next slide, Tim. So for round two, the initial round of funding was about $8.6 million. Round two, we allocated approximately $3.2 million. So you folks on the call tonight make up that $3.2 million allocation. So what is allowed? Most of you already know this, but just to go over it one more time. Contractor labor is obviously allowed, materials, major equipment purchases. So for example, we've had a couple theaters apply and they purchased theater equipment, from chairs to sound equipment, etc. Architecture, engineering services are included that you can use this funding for. What funds cannot be used for? Acquisition of property, of course, and operating expenses. So if you know, Erie County has a separate fund for operating expenses. If you qualify as a cultural organization and you do not receive operating expenses, you can feel free to go to our website and apply for operating expenses. But for this pot of funds, it is not for the purposes of operating. This is solely for capital expenses. And then lastly, all expenses must be incurred after full execution of funding contract to be eligible for reimbursement. So to put it plainly, you must have a contract before you can be reimbursed for any funds. So, and those funds must be incurred after you receive your contract. So anything before then wouldn't count. Next slide. And Tim, you can take it away here.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. So like Thomas said, my name is Tim German. I am one of the planners here with the Department of Environment and Planning. I've been here for just shy of 4 years now. And I know we've already spoken with several of you, but for everyone else, I'm looking forward to meeting you all and working with you. So so with that, I can just touch on a couple points here. So first off, we need to be able to demonstrate at a minimum an open and competitive process for any of the work or equipment that's going to be procured through this program. So what that means is you will need to either advertise the project in the paper typically, or you can go directly to your different contractors or vendors and get quotes from them. So we'd like to see at least 3 quotes for each work item. If you want to go ahead and advertise the project, you know, you could do it. You could put it in the Buffalo News. We typically tell people for just 1 day usually is sufficient, and that often will get picked up by some of the other publications that keep an eye out for this sort of thing, and by contractors that are looking for some more work for themselves. So the Buffalo News can tend to be a little bit on the pricey side these days. So if you wanted to go with another paper, maybe one of your local B or penny saver papers, that's certainly okay to do. So but you could just go ahead and put together a bid package for your project, your specifications, and what you're looking to have done, and you know, hopefully you'll get some responses from that. So but if on the other hand, if you don't want to advertise your project and you have vendors or contractors in mind you'd like to work with, you can just go and reach out to them directly and get quotes from them. And if you're not able to get at least 3 quotes, that's okay, as long as you can show us that you at least tried to reach out and get them to participate in your project. So once you have all of your quotes together, you can, well, firstly, if you could please provide us just sort of a summary of all the bids that you received, who the contractors were, and what their proposed price was for each one. And that's of course just good for us to have on our file, and just being able to back up the competitive process for these funds. So that about sums it up. You know, it's really your choice which contractor you choose, as long as they're within your budget, of course. So you know, typically we like to see an explanation if you don't go with the lowest bidder, just something saying that that they were the sort of the ideal candidate. If there's someone that you've worked with in the past, you know, there could be a number of reasons for that. So and you know, of course you want to spend the full award amount that you're receiving. So with that, I can go into the next point here. So the actual transfer of the funds to your organization. So and this will start to touch on the matters of whether you own your own site or if you lease. typically the contracts will all be between the county and your organization, so the funds will generally flow to the organization. And then, from there, if your landlord is managing the project, or it's really going to be kind of on a case by case basis. So, but you can, once we have the executed contract in place, you can go ahead and start to submit your draw requests or your payment requests. So each of those needs to be accompanied by the invoice from your contractor and proof of payment of that invoice. So, and this kind of gets into the next point, that all of these transfers are to be made on a reimbursement basis. And that's really probably the most important point that I want to emphasize tonight, that it's really are going to need to have some cash on hand to begin the project, because that's really the standard way that we operate with getting these funds out, is on a reimbursement basis. It just is the best way for us to do it. So, but sort of jumping back up to the line above, we'll essentially process the payments throughout the duration of your project, and then we will hold back 10% of the award, and then someone from our department will come out and visit your site, verify that the work was done satisfactorily, and then we can release that final payment. So I think that's a pretty good summary of those points here. So I can now actually, well, I want to take a look at the payment request sheet itself, if we could, for just a moment here. There's a couple points here that I would like to, couple things I'd like to point out. And so the organization field and contract number fields, we will fill out on our own, and we'll send this form out to you along with the executed contract. And so, like I said, we'll fill out these fields, and then we'll send that out to you. A lot of these are pretty self-explanatory. So for the invoice number, this is going to be, you're just going to start at invoice number 1. This is just invoices relative to this award. So you'll just start at invoice number 1 and go on sequentially from there. And if you want to include the number, your contractor invoice number down below, you can definitely do that. And for the invoice period of work, something important to point out here is that we want this to be sort of a date range, and we want each one of those ranges to line up sequentially, so we can kind of keep it organized a little bit better on our end. So most commonly you'll see it where so the period would begin with at the date of your contract execution, and then it would go on through your first set of expenses, whether it's a single expense or multiple. And then going down a little bit further, also pretty self-explanatory, but the amount requested in the invoice, the amount previously requested, total expenditures to date, so that would be the sum of the two lines above it. And not everyone will be using every one of these fields down here, but the kind of the intent of this is, if you have a project with multiple tasks, you have multiple different items that you're working on, you would just list those out here. And then for each one of these requests, you would give a percentage of completion of that task. And just, if you could please just give a little bit of a description of what's happened in that period and what you were able to accomplish. So that about covers it for that. So getting into some of the other contracts attachments that we're going to have and will be requesting from you. you'll be providing either your deed or your lease for your location, which you should have already provided, and we should already have that. But that will become an attachment to the contract, which will sort of establish, that you have the right to, make whatever changes to the property that you're going to be doing. And then this also also relates to something that you'll be seeing in the contract which is the public benefit period. And so in essence, it's the idea is that sort of in exchange for these for these funds, your organization is providing a service or a public benefit to the community, and that is those can run from a range, usually from about 1 to 10 years, depending on the size of your project. Larger awards will have a longer period, but essentially you are agreeing to provide the public benefit or the cultural benefit for the period in your contract, and then and so the where that comes in with the lease is that that your lease term will need to be at least that span at least that public benefit period. So that's something to keep in mind as we start getting into the working on your contracts. So going into the scope of services, there's a couple of different forms this can take. Usually it's about a 1 to 2 paragraph description of your project, and this is sort of a template that you could use if you'd like. But really the important points are that it includes the name of your project, your organization, the location, and the specific work items that are going to be done. And we often like to include language that would be inclusive of any improvements that you might want to make to the property, so you have a little bit of flexibility there. But this is just establishing the nature of the project itself, and sort of in plain terms. So next, we can just touch on the insurance certificates here. And these will be required for every contract, and your insurance agent should be able to provide these. On the left is the accord form, which is your general liability insurance and things of that nature. And then on the right is the workers' compensation certificate, which we will need to see the separate workers' comp certificate in addition to the accord form. So, and then if you are an organization that is all volunteers and has no paid employees, there is something called a CE-200 form, or a certificate of attestation of exemption, which just states that your organization is all volunteers and has no paid employees, and so there's no requirement for workers' comp insurance. So I think that about covers it for my portion of the program here. So I will turn it over to James Blackwell, who is our Director of Equal Opportunity Employment, to talk about a little bit of the diversity and inclusion initiatives that we have here at the county.
All right, thank you, Timothy. Good evening, everyone. So for these scopes that you all have, for contracts exceeding $250,000, apprenticeship will kick in. So the apprentice law for you all to reference is local law number 3 of 2018. If you want to pull that up for yourselves, you can go ahead and just really go to Google, type in Erie County local law number 3 of 2018. That'll take you to our law website. You can click the hyperlink and that'll take you to the law. So essentially what that says is that 10% of the hours performed, so the work hours performed on the job, will be performed by an apprentice from New York State certified program. So, kind of taking a step back to one of Timothy's slides, during your solicitation process, when you are, reaching out to the 3 vendors, one of the conversations that you should have with them is, will they be able to provide apprentices if you are in fact going to exceed the $250,000? So it can be whatever that vendor is, if they have any apprentices that they're going to be able to provide, or if they have any subcontractors who will be working underneath them, who will then be able to provide some apprenticeship participation. So when you submit your documentation, you'll be submitting the certification that would accompany anybody who is an apprentice. So it's AT401 is what it's called. So you reach out to Timothy German's plumbing company. He's going to be able to provide some plumbers. All of those plumbers who are in the apprenticeship hall, or who are apprentices in the hall, will have their certification form from New York State, and that's how we'll verify that. Okay. And then moving down, we certainly encourage the use of minority and women business enterprise participation, as well as service-disabled veteran-owned business participation. So again, taking a step back to Timothy's slide about soliciting bids and your 3 vendors, you can use Erie County's MWBE certified list and type in whatever the scope is that you're looking for. It'll populate a list of individuals who are certified to do that type of work, and MWBEs. And then you can reach out to them directly. So that's certainly a way of soliciting that, and you can keep a log of who you're reaching out to in the email correspondence. Same thing with service-disabled veteran-owned businesses. That's going to be a New York State list. So you can just go to New York State service-disabled veteran-owned business. Again, identify what the scope is that you're looking for and proceed accordingly. So, and actually, even with the minority and women-owned business, it's not just Erie County. You can also do the same thing with the New York State certified list. So, kind of within those real 3 options for MWB and SDVOB participation, you have a housed-in list already where you can pinpoint businesses who do that type of work, and that you can use that as certainly one means to solicit bids from individuals. So that's my little part there.
All right, thanks, James. So with that, just to touch on the next steps here in the process. So we anticipate starting to send the contracts out over the next couple weeks, certainly by the end of the month, worst case scenario. So definitely keep a lookout for those. Like I said, in the next couple weeks, and we'll be working with you all individually to get all of the attachments and everything in order. And just generally, going over your projects, making sure there's no wrinkles that we need to be aware of going forward, which I don't anticipate there will be. So once we get the contract, there's just we get the contracts back from you. There's just a bit of a turnaround period for us to get approval from our law department and county executive's office sign off. So there'll be just a little bit of a turnaround there. And then once we have the contracts, we'll be providing you with the payment request forms and any of the other necessary forms, and we'll be all set for you to get started, and you can start incurring expenses, and we'll be we'll be all set. So, so Thomas, unless you have anything to add, I think we're all set to go into the Q&As.
Yeah, no, nothing to add at this time. If you want to throw your questions in the chat, and I believe we have to unmute you if you want to speak, so you can either put your questions in the chat or raise your hand, and then we can unmute you, whichever you prefer. We'll hold for a little bit while folks ask questions. So Tim, I see Fred has his hand raised. Are you able to unmute him?
Yep, let's see here. Okay, Fred, you're all set to go.
Go. All right. Are you allowed to use non-union contractors?
So yes, you're allowed to use non-union contractors if your contract is exceeding $250,000. So let's put it this way, right? If I own a roofing company, and I'm non-union, I can do business with you on this project. However,
Are there
there has to
certified
be-
payrolls then? Are we dealing with prevailing wage? Are we dealing with certified payrolls, MWB goals? I mean,
So yeah, so you with bringing in the apprentice, you'd be paying those rates.
so it is union then. I mean, if you bring it, so well, no, is it certified payroll?
So
Payroll certified at union levels, or is this a PLA? I'm just asking the,
yeah. So okay, I understood. It would be certified.
so you want prevailing wage on this job? So we got to pay
Or
union. That's what I mean. That is a prevailing wage job.
it would be a prevailing wage job.
Okay, not a pro. And then why do we have? We're dealing with all these not-for-profits, smaller not-for-profits. So we've got a project that's worth $240,000. It may take a month to do. So our total revenues for the year are $250,000. How do we expect to pay all $250,000 up front? And how long will the county wait to pay us? Is it 30, 60, 90? I mean, what do we have to do to make the contractors get paid? So I've got to show you I've got a receipt from the contractor. He got paid full. And then because the project's not going to take that long. I mean, it's a month or two, but what is your timetable on paying?
So for the
Tim, you
payment
want to take this
request,
one?
it usually is about a 3 to 4 week turnaround. And I can just clarify that it doesn't have to be the entire amount. You know, I understand that it wouldn't necessarily take very long. But you know, this is something that we could definitely talk about offline.
Okay.
Kind of work.
That's why I wanted to bring up the question, because the project will take a month, but by the time he bills us, he's not going to bill us that first month. He's got to build up his pay. Then I pay him. Then I got to wait for all that money. I mean, where do we get this money if we can't bill and then show you proof that we paid him after you paid us? That's how it normally works.
Yeah, we definitely recognize some of the challenges, and so this is going to be in a lot of cases sort of a case by case basis. So once we kind of get into the process here a bit, we can definitely have a conversation. We have I think we'll have some options that we'll be able to work with.
So I circle back to you, Tim. That's my question? That's the other question. Who's my point guy for payments, this kind of stuff, or these kind of technical questions as we go forward? The right contractor, because our staff is, we've got an executive director, no other payroll, so someone's got to manage. And our executive director is not familiar with managing construction accounts. An AAA, AAA forms got to be filled, certified payrolls got to be filled. I mean, there's a lot of work for at least, not-for-profit that's inexperienced.
Yeah. Let me jump in here. Couple things, Fred. Number one, when you get into the world of, the certified payroll and apprenticeship, just keep in mind that that is in excess of the $250,000. So if your organization was awarded more, $250,000 or more, then that's when that law would kick in. So that's number one. Number two, the way we divide the work is Tim is the point person for the program, but as we distribute the different projects, you may have another planner or senior planner who's going to be
Okay.
taking the lead on the project. So
All right.
either way, you will know very, very distinctly and clearly who the team is that will be supporting your project.
Okay. So then we're under $250,000. So you want us to do our best faith effort so we don't have to do all the certified payrolls. Now, but is the project wage wise even under $250,000? Is it prevailing wage?
No,
That makes a
no.
big difference in, because if I get a union bid, a non-union bid, that's, obviously
Yeah.
makes a difference.
And that's why, Fred, I want to make the clear distinction that, once you hit the $250,000 threshold, that's when that kicks in. So if your project is less than that and you've been awarded less than that, then that's nothing that you should be worried about. And then that puts you
Okay.
right into exactly what you said, the good faith effort to procure MWBE, SDVOB, is relative to who you then will contract with.
Perfect. And and we'll make, so that is the payment issue was the other issue, just because we're small, but because it's not a big, it sounds big, but it isn't long. So all right.
I would
So then as we go along, we'll reach out.
I would encourage, a part of this is, having the awareness that it is government funding, and naturally it comes with a lot of, red tape and stipulations, and we understand that completely. So when you're working with procuring your contractor, I would be having those conversations up front.
Yep.
And letting them know that you perhaps have to phase it out, so that you can invoice a portion, get reimbursed, invoice a portion, get reimbursed, and sort of do that song and dance until you can get to the contractor being fully paid. But nonetheless, these are things that we've worked through before in round one, so we're no strangers to doing this.
Okay.
So we're confident that we can work it out with you.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate the, go forward.
Sure. All right, we got some questions in the chat. What is the deadline for incurring expenses? Tim, you want to tackle that one while I look at these other questions?
So by default, the contract has a term of 2 years from the date of execution. So, we think that should be a sufficient amount of time for most projects. We understand that delays and snags will happen, so that's, could certainly be extended if there's a legitimate reason for it. But by default, it's 2 years from the date of execution to completing the project.
So just relative to timing and going back to the slide that had, what we will be doing within the next 3 months, January, February, March. That's why it's important for us to get the contracts out now, and as quickly as possible, simply because we want you all to take the season, especially when it's cold outside, if you're doing exterior work, to get your bids and get your contract in place so that when the weather breaks, we expect for work to start. So that's why it's important, so that we can get these contracts underway as quickly as possible. And so when you get your contract, we want you to get your bids and get it back to us as quickly as possible. All right, moving on. I think we covered this, but is there any chance of an initial payment from Erie County to get started? I think the safe answer is no. And partly because, we've been asked this question a bunch, but partly because from the county's perspective, we really have to avoid anyone taking the funds that we have, and we have no recourse subsequent to if we gave you all the money up front. So the reimbursement is just protecting our investment so that if things go awry, we haven't given all the money and then, we have to struggle to get it back. So the reimbursement shows good faith effort for the organization to get the work done, pay for the work, and the reimbursement is the safest thing for county. So that is the reason why we do it that way. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat, and I don't see any more hands raised.
Thomas, I got a couple of questions in a private channel that I could maybe read.
Sure.
So we got a question about, could you explain the benefit period for those of us with a short lease?
So this is kind of a complicated thing that we must do when folks don't own their buildings. So, for example, if you have a small project, let's say that you're a theater company and you've requested $1,000 for chairs, and the county awards you $1,000 for the chairs, and you have a lease for, let's say, 5 years. You have a 5-year lease. Relative to how much we awarded this theater company $1,000, the public benefit wouldn't be so long because it's only $1,000. So we wouldn't require you to have a long-term lease of 10 years or 5 years. Maybe we would require you to have a 2-year lease or 3-year lease because the expense was so small. So what we do in the calculation is determine how long the lease is appropriate to the amount of money that we gave you. So like Tim mentioned before, if we're awarding you $1 million and investing $1 million to a building that this nonprofit does not own, this cultural organization does not own, then we would expect that the lease that you would have with your landlord would be, 10 years at least, because we would have invested so much money into this property that the organization doesn't own. And the landlord could turn around and kick the organization out, and we would have replaced the roof or something like that. And the landlord could rent for luxury apartments or something like that. And therefore, the public benefit, the cultural benefit to the community is then extinguished. So that's the reason for it. And that's how we create or develop that formula. So as Tim also mentioned, these are case-by-case scenarios. So we would have to analyze what your project is, how long your lease is, and other factors to come up with that for that time period and that term determination. So hopefully that makes sense. But to put it in plain terms, the more money that we invest, the longer the lease should be. The less money that we invest, in, the fewer months and years that the lease should be.
Thanks, Thomas. So there's another question about, do you know when the awards will be announced to the public?
They should already have been announced to the public, correct?
Yeah, I mean it's public information.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we've actually posted on the website yet, so I think we can look at doing that.
Yeah, I think it's already been announced to the public.
Okay. So there's a question on the certification, the workers' compensation certification. Let's see here. Yeah, there's a form that you can download from one of the New York State websites, and if you want to reach out to me, I can help you access that. And yeah, there's some folks from the state who can help you out with that. It's a pretty simple process. And then we have a question saying that we had to include price quotes with the initial application. We intend to use those contractors that we included, essentially whether or not that's okay, and that's fine. I think it would definitely be a good idea now to, if you've already talked to some contractors, it would be a good idea now to probably reach back out to them, make sure that those that those quotes are still good. But aside from that, I see no reason why you can't go with someone you've already been working with. Again, just as long as you can sort of establish that the competitive process.
Yeah, I would definitely, I would echo that, Tim, with the inflation in the market right now and the demand for contractors. I would definitely revisit any quotes that are more than a month old, just because things are changing so rapidly. We see it in other programs and other projects that prices have increased. So where that contractor may just increase the price just for the sake of increasing it, but we also want to see the current bids to make sure that that pricing is competitive. So absolutely have your contractors revisit their pricing. And then there is a Dr. Stokes that has his hand raised. Tim, if you can unmute. There
Okay,
you
Phil,
go.
you're unmuted.
Yeah. All right. We got both hands raised, guys. Thank you. So yeah, I had the question about the announcement, and I just wanted to know, like, is it okay for my organization to make an announcement like to our channels and like a press release? And then, is there a link to the county webpage where we can send people for more info?
Let's do this. Dr. Stokes, why don't you reach out to Tim tomorrow? I just want to make sure that what we present on the county is appropriate, because we were setting up for this webinar, and I think that page is webinar focused.
Yes.
So before we start sending folks to the page, let me just make sure that it's appropriate for public consumption.
Mhm.
So we'll figure that out by the end of this week. So Tim, if you want to reach out to Dr. Stokes, and we'll make sure that everything is set up for an appropriate announcement.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, yeah, of course. We'll be in touch about that. All right, so that's all the questions that I can see.
We'll give it another minute or so. Please throw your questions in the chat if you have any, and don't feel like this is the last time you can ask questions. Tim's information. Tim, you want to go to your slide with your information? You should have received this webinar from Tim, but we're always available to answer any questions you have. Like I said, this will be posted. This webinar will be posted, so you can refer back to it. And we'll wait for a couple more minutes just to make sure no other questions. You're welcome. For the folks who put thank you in the chat, our pleasure. Let's see.
Yeah, everyone, definitely don't hesitate to reach out to me with any questions or concerns you might have. We do this pretty much all day, every day. So this is, really, it definitely makes my day when I'm able to, we're able to help someone address one of these issues. So yeah, definitely don't hesitate to reach out.
Nothing else. Again, congratulations to those who won this award. We certainly expect it to have a great impact on your organizations. That's what it's intended for. And again, let me reiterate, we are here to help you. This is not the last time you'll be hearing from us. We typically like to get out and put eyes on each of the projects. So look for Tim or someone else from DEP to reach out to you to have a walkthrough and to see what actually the need is. That's one of the joys of doing this, is being able to really connect with the organizations on a real personal level. And that's what we're here for. So if nothing else, I hope you all have a wonderful night. Stay safe. I know it's pretty windy still. And as always, go Bills.
Thanks, everyone.